Keep on walking down the line. Keep on walking down the line. Keep on walking down that street. Keep on walking down the line.
This is Smooth's production.
For the last 2 years, I've been researching and studying Dogman, the myth, the legend, everything about it. Now, let me tell you, I've listened to over 1,000 hours of stories and interviews. A lot of the information out there is straight up BS, but there was a little bit more. Once you kind of digested all the bull crap and you look deep into the reports, you start to find these patterns: missing persons, pets being killed, blog reports on the deep web. They all prove to me that this creature does in fact exist. Issue I had for a very long time was following a lot of that information sent me on the wildest goose chase you could ever imagine. I went to Columbus, Ohio, North Dakota, Michigan, Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas. But it was the activity on the border of Texas and Louisiana that really caught my attention. Small town, an incident showed up on 4chan. 2 young teenagers were out fishing along the Sabine River. They anchored their boat right along the shore and fished out into the currents. Less than 30 minutes of them being anchored in that spot, they were frightened away by what they described as a brown werewolf. They said it stood up and walked to the banks and then submerged itself into the water and started swimming towards them. The 2 young men pulled anchor and sped away in their boat. Then I found another encounter that appeared on 8chan. The same area, a local farmer was having his cattle and farm animals killed. The police report said that he told the authorities that he saw a werewolf. That report never hit the paper or never hit any news. 2 incidents within a 10-mile radius. I decided, hell, that's the best lead I had in a long time, so I went to check it out. Now, it took me about a week or so to get myself together just to travel down to Louisiana. When I got to Louisiana, I went straight to the river area. And it took me a while, damn near an entire day. But then I found a set of tracks. And not regular tracks, giant canine tracks. Now, before I go any further, I need you to understand something. I reached out to many people about this story, several of your most popular YouTubers. Their interest was only in the story, not me or the consequences of what happened to me after this, the health problems, the tax problems. And even now, I swear to God, someone is watching me. Not one of the popular Dogman YouTubers ever gave a damn about that. They just wanted the story. But this is more than just about my story. This is my life. And my obsession with Dogman has straight up ruined my quality of life. Now, moving on. Once I verified that this creature was in the area, I left, returned home, and began to plan a way to trap it. You see, I have a very, very close friend of mine. His name is Jonathan. And there's 2 things you need to know about Johnny. Johnny is an expert hunter and a master trapper. Now, it took a little while for me to bring him up to speed on the whole Dogman thing. Then to convince him that it was real. And once I had him convinced that it was real, for him to figure out what the hell we could do to trap it. Johnny decided that the best way to trap this creature was to use nature against it. He devised a trap that he would submerge into the ground on a 45-degree angle. He said that this trap would use the forces of the earth above it, around it, and below it to reinforce it and make sure that this creature could not escape. And he was going to use a metal gate to hold the creature in place. And I'm going to be honest with you, when Johnny told me the concept of how he was going to build this trap submerge it in the ground, put dirt on top of it, pack it down. I'm thinking to myself, this shit is never going to work. Two reasons why I didn't think this was going to work. Number one, the land in the area was all private, so he was going to have to get access to that private land. Number two, he couldn't drive the trap on the back of a truck from where we were to where it is, so he had to build it on site. But when you add in all the rest of the factors, I figured that we were dead in the water before we even started. A couple of days later, Johnny disappears and I don't see him for about a week. When he returns, it turns out that not only was he able to build the trap, but he's able to get access to that farmer's land whose cattle had been being slaughtered. Now don't even ask me how or what Johnny said to convince the landowner Lawrence to let us build a trap on his property. And honestly, from the beginning, I thought it was kind of suspect. But when I arrived, what I saw was absolutely astounding. Standing in front of that trap and actually seeing it built and constructed in person, I was excited. But there was a side of me that began to doubt all of this shit. You know, trapping a freaking monster? I was thinking to myself, this has got to be the craziest thing you've ever done. Where do you go from here? What do you do with it once you have it trapped? As I stood there, all these thoughts went through my head. Johnny could tell that I was doubting the plan. That's when he simply put his hand on my shoulder and said, "It's going to be all right, buddy. We'll get through this." For the next couple of days, Johnny, myself, and Lawrence spent night after night inside his F-150, waiting to see if this creature would show. But nothing. We baited the trap with pigs, goats, fresh cow meat. Absolutely nothing worked. That was until early one morning. Johnny said, "Man, maybe we should tranquilize the doe, tie him up, and put him inside the trap. That might just make this thing come out." I read online that they eat a lot of deer meat. Within 48 hours, we had tranquilized the deer, tied him up, and put him inside of the trap. And that very same night, we got some activity. Holy shit. That is a night I will never, ever forget. You see, the first thing I need you to understand is that this creature is fast, man. Real fast. Especially when it's moving on all fours. We're all there sitting in the truck, cracking jokes, laughing, hanging out, waiting for something to happen. When this creature comes zooming past the side of the truck. Have you ever seen something with your own two eyes and tried to tell yourself that you didn't see what you thought you saw? Well, that's exactly what each and every one of us did. It happened so fast and it was so crazy that Lawrence turned to me and said, "Am I going crazy or did you see that too?" And understand something else. This creature was nothing like what you hear online and you hearing these stories. It looked like a fox. A white and brown fox with a long tail. I mean fucking long, exaggerated long. Like somebody drew it on its body. Now let me tell you, it's one thing to read books and listen to stories about these things. But it's a whole nother goddamn story to be sitting in a truck when one of them runs by you. Seconds later, and I mean seconds, no more than 35 seconds, we hear the steel door on the trap slam close. Shaking, banging sounds of the creature slamming against that gate. Lawrence and Johnny both hopped out of the truck and took off running towards the trap. But me, I hesitated. Why, you may ask? Because I was afraid, man. I didn't know if I really wanted to see this or not. But by the time I mustered up the courage and arrived to where the trap was, flashlight in hand, what I saw shocked the hell out of me. This creature was on all fours, and when I shined the light at it, I could see that it was intelligent, and it was nothing like what I expected. It was slender, not muscular at all, and I swear to you, it looked a lot like a fox, except for it was just overgrown. It put me in the mindset that this was some kind of prehistoric ancestor to the modern day fox that had survived all these years. And the only difference between it and a normal fox that I really saw was the size and then the exaggerated length of these super long ears. As I stood there shining a light, this creature reached up and grabbed one of the bars of the gate, wrapping its long claws around it, and gave me this look. It wasn't evil, nor was it malicious. It looked like it was afraid, almost as if it wanted my pity. That's when Lawrence stepped forward and stood right next to me. When I tell you instantly, this thing's eyes opened wide with this look of recognition, but not just as if it recognized him, but that face looking for pity turned into a face of hatred. Its lips rolled back and it bared its teeth and began to growl. And that's when his creature turned its back to us and started to dig. I have never seen anything like this in my life. The sheer amount of earth that this creature was able to move and the speed at which it did it, within 120 to 160 seconds, the creature had moved enough dirt to where it was starting to pile up. Lawrence said, "Shoot it, kill it, shoot it." But that was never my intention. I didn't come here to kill one of these things. I just wanted to see it for myself. And as he stood there shouting, it stopped, turned, looked at him, showing its teeth with its head twisted slightly to the right, this vicious, mean, murderous look in its eye. In that moment, I knew that somehow this creature clearly understood what he was saying. And it also was at that time that I realized we had gotten ourselves into some shit we didn't need to be in. Lawrence was not telling us the truth about everything. There had to be way more to what was going on this property than what he told us. I turned towards Johnny, who was carrying a rifle. And just as I opened my mouth to tell him, "Hey man, I think we fucked up. We really need to go." And that's when we could hear it, this growling, roaring sound. It sounded like a goddamn dinosaur was less than a mile away. Lawrence took off running back to his truck. And on sheer instinct alone, Johnny and I followed right behind him on his heels. And as I ran, my chest contracted, tightened up. I started to feel dizzy. My mind told me it was a heart attack, but I knew it was just the fear. Something was coming, something worse than what we had saw in that trap. When I arrived at the truck, out of breath, damn near passing out, I stumbled in. That's when Jonathan flipped out. "What the fuck aren't you telling us, Lawrence? Something's going on. Tell us what's going on." You see, in the back of my mind, I always knew that it was something strange about the fact that Lawrence let us build this trap on his property. I just didn't want to admit it because I was so obsessed with seeing this creature. Lawrence, while driving off, looked over his shoulder at Jonathan and said, "Well, I killed one not too long ago. It looked just like the one that we trapped, but it was a lot smaller." The look on Lawrence's face was a mixture of fear, anguish, and sadness. "It was a mistake," he said. "I thought it was just a fox coming out of my chicken coop. I shouted, and I didn't realize something was different about it until it stood up and stumbled away." Lawrence went on to tell us that he followed the blood trail to where the body should have been, but he only found prints, huge canine prints. And in his mind, he thought it was only two of them, the one that he killed and the one that we had just trapped. And that's when Lawrence looked directly at me, tears in his eyes, and said, "Whatever that is coming, it sounds completely different than anything I've ever heard." Johnny and I had stepped into some shit we were completely unprepared for. This bastard Lawrence had lied to us. Had I known that he had shot one of these creatures or even tried to kill one, there would have been no way that we would have come to this property. You see, him shooting one of them explained why they were killing his cattle, his cats, his farm animals. They wanted him gone. We had just turned onto the dirt access road that led back to the front side of his property. Lawrence was now speeding 50 miles an hour in a full-on panic, saying, "It's coming. I know it's coming. I can feel it." And no sooner than those words had left his mouth, there was an impact on the driver's side door. It felt like we got hit by a fucking dump truck. The last thing I remember was the glass from the window stabbing me in my cheek and all over my face. And from that moment, things got foggy. I remember drifting in and out of conscious, the smell of gasoline, the truck being upside down, Johnny's foot shaking and trembling, and the pain, my God, so much pain. I vaguely remember Lawrence screaming, "Help me, help me." And when I finally was fully awake, Johnny was standing over me. And it's strange the things you remember in a moment like this. The grass between my fingers was so moist. His head was bleeding, and he was on the phone calling 911. Ambulances came, doctors. Next thing you know, I got IVs in my arm. And when I fully came through and became conscious again, I was told that I had 2 broken ribs. One had punctured my lung, a fractured collarbone. The police were there, and they started asking me questions about who hit us, where was the driver of the vehicle. And when I told them what actually happened, we were just driving down the access road and were blindsided by what I thought was another vehicle, they looked at each other and just walked out. Johnny came to see me a few hours later, and he looked like shit. Stitches in his head, his face all swollen and warped. But what he told me scared me even more. He told me that while he was sitting in the lobby of the ER waiting on me, 2 men walked in, and they asked him what were we doing trapping in the woods, and what exactly did we trap. Johnny said that he told them we trapped a big fox, bigger than any fox that he'd ever seen. To which they replied, a big fox or a regular sized fox? He repeated, we trapped the biggest fox I've ever seen. This time, they stepped closer to him and said, no, you trapped the regular sized fox. Do you understand me? Then they proceeded to tell him everything about himself. His name, his address, his social security number, his mother's date of birth, everything down to his porn habits. They told him to go home and to take me with him. And if we ever showed up in Louisiana again, we might just have another accident. This time, one we won't survive. Now, as soon as I was able to get in a wheelchair and get the hell out of Louisiana, I left. We went looking for Dogman, and we found him. But it wasn't exactly what I expected it to be. And as to answer the question of what or who hit our truck, neither Johnny or I actually saw it. Now, I can tell you this, Lawrence was never found. And the last I checked, his property was sold to some corporation out of Georgia. Now, I still listen to Dogman stories, but as far as hunting them or even looking for them, there's absolutely no need. I know for a fact that they're real. And this experience has caused me both financial and emotional trauma. For example, Johnny, one of my oldest friends, won't even speak to me anymore. I don't know if it's something that those men told him or if he's upset with me, but I call him and he doesn't answer the phone, and when I go by his house, I hear him inside, but he won't even open the door. All these people running around talking about they want to find Dogman and they want to see Dogman. Dogman has ruined my fucking life.